Hey guys, and welcome back to another YouTube video. In this video we'll be doing the AFL Fantasy Midfielders Premium review, going through, or preview I guess, going through all of the top tier guys. And to set, like I did with the defenders, to set sort of the primo status, you could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You could say sort of the premium guys in the midfield are probably, I would say, going to be around about that sort of 800 or so K and upwards. Anything below that sort of isn't a premium for me, and they're sort of looking at that sort of top end of the mid prices, like those like Carl Amons and stuff like that. Anyone below there is sort of a mid-pricer or high-end mid-pricer for me, as that's sort of the way I look at it. It may not mean necessarily like a premium, but more like a keepers and no keepers, but obviously for the title's sake, it'll be premiums. But before we get into this video, remember to like and subscribe, turn the notification bell on so you know when I upload, and let's get into this video. So as you can see here, we have the midfielders on the AFL Fantasy Stats Center, and then obviously we have the DFS, because we use this widely as it is a great source of information. And then we have 40 Wire as well over here, which we can flick to, and we can search up players as well. So first up, Marcus Bontempelli had off-season surgery, so that sort of was a worry. Has been talks about him moving and doing a little bit more forward work. So if we actually look at the CBAs, you will see that he was like 85%, something like that. He was a high number, very, very high number, 81%, and he didn't even get close to being a forward. So I would sort of expect probably him to have that sort of 70, given what we've heard. I would suspect probably, given his last season was a 58, and the season before that was also, the season before last season was a 58, and then the season before that was a 73. I'm thinking he's more going to follow this sort of 73 sort of range here that we saw, and drop a little bit from that 81, just because I think they will use him a little bit in the forward line, given that he can be effectively a key forward. And we've seen, if we're looking, what year was this? Was this 2021 we're looking at? And his 2021 year, he averaged 105. So that's the worry with me, is that I don't see there genuinely being a way in which Bont can improve the 117 that he's got. Yes, he is such a top-end scorer with 1800s and 8 120s. And we see with this 2021 form, he had a very, very similar sort of 100s and 120s. So he's improved his top end, you would suspect, with that. And if I actually go to 2021, if we go to 2021, was there an injury game somewhere in here? It doesn't look like there was any injury game per se. It just looks like he didn't really have those 160s that he had occasionally in 2023. You can see here, and it's got time on ground as well. And then also here as well, you see big scores in, no, that's 2022. So you see 3 big-ish scores, and even a 129 and a one. I'm picking up scores now. And there you go. So you see, what's that in total? 8 games across those. He had 8 huge games of 120 plus, and they averaged 140. If we look at his 120 pluses in 2021, you will see sort of a different sort of output. You see one here, 120, 120, 120, 120, and then one here as well. And he had 7 games for a 128. So just shows that he's really increased his ceiling. But I think that he'll probably go back to sort of a 112 guy, 113 guy. I don't think he'll back it up with a 117. And that's why I'm generally giving him a miss, because the top end guys that I have at the moment in my side, I believe actually have that leeway to go up towards that 116, 117 and have 5 or 6 points of upside as a premium. And that's sort of what I look for in my M1 and M2. So there's that. Oliver, we just heard within the last about 45 minutes to an hour. It's probably actually going to come up on my feed if I go here and go to explore, go to here, go to Oliver, let's go Clayton Oliver, and you'll see probably in the last hour, you'll see that there's a lot of stuff. You can see Matt Forrest coming up in the last hour saying that he is basically back. So there's that. So he's back, and it's probably the most awkward time to be back, because he sort of, if he was another week or two away from not rejoining the main group, he would be in doubt, massive doubt for round one. Whereas now he's, I would say, a 90% chance of playing round one. And I think there's a very high likelihood that he obviously does play, and he's in decent enough condition that he takes up his normal fair share. Whether he's at the same sort of fantasy points per minute for his regular CBAs is another thing, but I think he does get the nod to get his normal role, which does impact Brayshaw, and we'll see. I need to look into the stats whether that's a positive or a negative impact, but I'll get that before we go to the Brayshaw's going to be a defender, isn't he? Let me just check this, because I think he does have... Yeah, he'll be in the defender part of it. So Brayshaw, we'll look at that when we go to... I think, did we put him in the... We may have put him in the... Because he's a 770k. We probably already looked at him. But I may just give an update with him on the stats when we do the mid-pricer one as well, because he's on that range almost of mid-prices and premium status for me in that backline. Jordan Dawson, some saying he obviously does have the potential to go up, and we've seen that because if we look at Footy Wire for Jordan Dawson, if we look at teams, and then we go to Adelaide, and then we go to players. Do you have players anywhere? We'll just go Jordan Dawson through here, fantasy profile, and I want to see his start to the year. It wasn't that bad actually in 92, 101, 81. And then he moves sort of into the midfield. If we look at through the DFS CBAs, you'll see he moved into the midfield in round 3, where he dropped in 81, then went 122, 133, 103, 112, 116, 116, and then dropped in 85. Who was that 85 against? That was against the Bulldogs, where he dropped 85 on 75% CBA, so I don't know what happened there necessarily, and then had a low CBA game against Gold Coast in round 21, where he had 58 and 58 CBAs percentage-wise, and only dropped to 98. So Jordan Dawson, I think he will go 108 plus, but I don't know if he has that potential to go he has the potential to go 119, should I say. I don't think it's as concrete that he'll be the top scorer, and I don't know if that's because... I don't know if the uncertainty is just because it's the Matt Crouch effect or what's going on in that midfield, but I don't want to pay up for a guy who's had probably a career best year and doesn't really see a role change in particular. I'd rather go for a Rory Laird, who I think can bounce back heavily. Zach Merritt, I really like the look of him just as a stalwart, but at 1.02 million, I don't think he'll be the top scorer in the comp, and I don't think there's much upside potentially for him, to be honest with you, or at least I don't see it, and the risk outweighs the reward of... If he's even a 113 guy, that's just not enough, to be honest with you. When you're looking for premiums, I'm looking for guys that have +5 upside, and if Merritt doesn't go that upside, then it's a little bit more in the bank compared to a guy like a Brayshaw or a Laird, as you have that extra sort of 30, 40k to spend on rookies, which will be a lot more beneficial in my opinion. So going for a guy like Merritt holds a lot more risk because than a guy like Brayshaw, because the risk of him not going up to that sort of +5, +6 potentially limits a couple 30, 40k of cash gen, to be honest with you. So that's why I'm not going Merritt. And he also has that Hawthorn game round 1, which is a little bit awkward for him, but he's certainly someone that I'm looking for later once we get sort of everyone evened out around their averages for the year. But I just don't see much in a pun merit to start him, to be honest with you, as a 113. I don't think he goes up to a 119. I think he sticks around that 110 to 115, which isn't as much value as like a Brayshaw or a Laird, who I suspect will go up to that 115 to 120 range, given that they have a full preseason. Tim Taranto, don't see there being much value there present, given that he's got the early buy. That basically rules out the next three guys in Taranto, Goulden, and Green, as they basically need to jump 2.5 points in itself, or 2.5, 3 points just to cover the buy. But then they also need to jump another 5 points to get that expectation of increased value for me to have them at M1 and M2. And I don't see Timmy Taranto going, probably around a 120 across the whole year. I don't expect Goulden to go around that sort of, what's he priced at in the end? Around about that 122, 123, is it, roughly? So he's priced at 112.5. Taranto's priced at 112.4. So yeah, they got to go around there. And Tom Green could do it, but I'm more worried about just that extremely early buy. And if you were to go Tom Green, you'd almost have to go back to Sam Walsh. And I just don't want to lock in a trade basically yet for Tom Green. So that's why I wouldn't be going for him. Then we move on to my M1 and M2 at the moment. They might not even be in the right order. So going to have to actually check that out on my phone quickly to see if they're in the right order. But right now I have Brayshaw and Laird in my side, and I'm pretty sure they actually are in the right order. Just checked. I'm pretty sure about 2 days ago I didn't have them in my side. So just shows how I'm sort of flipping and stuff like that with news about players being out, etc. The forward line has basically collapsed within the last about day or two, to be honest with you. But Brayshaw, 23 games, 110 last year. If we look at Brayshaw in the past, if we look at his, where is the Fremantle Dockers? We look at Brayshaw, and yes, this is either going to be Brayshaw or Sarong, basically. I did look at Parrish potentially, but I don't like that first couple. Parrish, I do like the first couple games, but I'm interested to see what happens with Hawthorn for him. But if you look at Brayshaw here, he's gone 113 in the past, had increased time on ground, lower points per minute, and just this lower max score, and a lower 120 count. So if he can get those sort of that ceiling back again, he could easily go sort of that 120 odd, and you can even see in finals a 124. He could easily, well, not 120, honestly. Sorry. I was looking at a stat and reading it rather than actually thinking my thoughts. I reckon he could go a 116, 117 if he pushes it, because if we look at why he was down, basically, it actually wasn't the disposals at all, because that combines to 42 plus 15.1, which is 15.1 times 2 plus 42, 72.2 in disposals compared to 44.4 plus 29.2, 73.6. So down 1.4 points in disposals, and basically down the last, the other points, the other 1.6 points in what looks to be a little bit of marks, but then also decreased his behinds would mean like 2 or 3 points, and then the free kicks against as well. The free kick differential went more in his favour, which was a good thing. But yeah, if he can increase his marks, which could actually occur because he's going to be more on the outside, potentially on a wing role if they do include Fife and stuff like that, then I do see him potentially dropping, him potentially going up another 6-7 points, and that'll just because he can get that marks back up to sort of that 5 range, or 4.5, 5 range, and he'll stay at those sort of disposals and get towards that 116 is what we're really looking at with Brayshaw. So there's that. Then the next guy we're talking about is Rory Laird, and if I bring up Laird here, let me just bring it up here. You'll see 120 the year in 2022, 109 in 2023, a 2021 he had a 111, and then in 2020 he had a 80 on 38% CBAs. That 80 corresponds to, in the COVID season, a direct score of 100. So I think he can easily step it up another gear, to be honest. 1700, 120s. And if we look quickly, if I just change it back again to my screen here, and then we go here, and we bring this up again, and we go to the inside mids. Let me just change this so it can actually be seen. There we go. You will see Adelaide for inside mids has a really good run to start, a 1.47 to start. So, and it's really on the back of this round 7 game, to be honest with you. If we actually do this, and then we go to R equals average of these sort of first 6 rounds. I just want to see how much does it. It's actually negative, so it actually shows that the complete opposite of what I'm trying to say. So yeah, he really is banking on this round 7 game. But also, if you look at the teams that they play, it's probably actually easier to show it in AFL Fantasy here. They play the Suns, who could leak. They play Geelong, who we expect to get worse. They play Freo, who we expect to stay bad and probably leak more in the midfield, to be honest with you. We expect to see Melbourne be a little bit worse, to be honest with you. Carlton have lost their tagger. Essendon's midfield you could run riot in my opinion, to be honest with you. And it shows, does it show with where's Essendon? Round 6, Essendon here. You can see a 0.99. And then they had the favourable matchup against North. And where's their matchup against Port? Port at Adelaide Oval will be tough. So he does come up in this run in 3 teams here. At Port at Adelaide, it's still a neutral ground, to be honest with you, in that derby game. Then you got the Lions at home. Lions at home, they sort of play worse away from home, so that should actually be a positive. Then you do have the tough Collingwood game, but then you have Adelaide Oval against the Eagles, and Hawthorn, Richmond and Sydney away from home should be a better game for them, considering if we actually look at the player summary for him against Sydney, he put up a 118 at Adelaide Oval, I believe it was. If we go to the actual game, can it bring me the actual game? I believe this at Adelaide Oval. Adelaide Oval, yeah. It was at Adelaide Oval, so that should help. And if I just quickly bring that back up and then get out of it there. So, yes, I do think that Rory Laird is a really good option this year. Nick Dacos, we talked about in the defenders. Caleb Sarong basically follows the Brayshaw. It's whoever's going to get that midfield time alongside Hayden Young, as one of them's probably going to have to shift out to the wing, given that it's Young, Sarong, Brayshaw, Fife, and Johnson looks like he's going to get the nod as the 4th or 5th midfielder, and that's sort of the rotation they're going to run if we look at the AFL and then the CBAs. And then we go to Fremantle here as well. And then we go to here, you'll see it was Sarong, Brayshaw, disregard Brody, disregard Jaden O'Meara. I don't think he's going to have much of an impact. Disregard Luke Jackson. Fife was 3rd, and Johnson 4th. But then when we saw in the latter half of the year, Hayden Young, he was hitting at, probably roughly 70% or so, which would put him as the 3rd midfielder. So it will just be interesting to see what Fife's role is alongside what Johnson's role is in their midfield. But I do think it will be one of the 2 out of Brayshaw and Sarong that I'll go with. Parrish looked at like his early schedule, but again, there is the McGuinness tag effect that could occur, and he's not really a midfielder. If we actually look at Essendon and then look at his stats in general, you'll see he's not really a midfielder that racks up the non-disposal points. If we look here at his 4 and 4 isn't actually the worst, to be honest. That was massive up from last year's season, a 0.6 up in marks and a 1 up in tackles. So I'm actually surprised to see that at that marker. That is his actual best. But the problem is that he relies on getting basically 30 touches a game, and he is a handball heavy guy comparative to other guys. So that does in the end probably lose him about 2 or so points in general, 2-3 points average over the course of the season, at least through just it's probably actually more. It's probably more like 6 or 7 points on average, just through his handball heavy game. So that is a problem for him, but he does have a pretty favourable matchup if I want to. It says Hawthorn isn't that favourable for him actually. This actually says the complete opposite. Round 2 they have, if we look up here, they've got Sydney. That's not going to be a good matchup, to be honest, now thinking about it. But he does do, if we look at these actual opponents. So he's got, in round 1, he has Hawthorn, West Hawthorn. Middle of the pack, he averages 88 against them. Has had, I think, a couple tag games. And then he's got Sydney, who have tagged him before out of the game. So, but they've only really ever tagged him to like an 80, 84. So it's not the worst. And then he's got, who have they got after that? Let me just check here. Because I'm pretty sure this was a positive run for him. He's got St Kilda. St Kilda are one of his worst sides as well for 80 average, max 120 against them, but had back-to-back years, 2021 and 2023, where he's gone 117 and 120, so that's positive. And then he's got Port Adelaide and Western Bulldogs. Port Adelaide, where are they? They're here as well. And you'll see against them, he's gone 119, 104, 117, and 125. And then he's got Western Bulldogs. Where are Western Bulldogs? They are here. And you can see against Western Bulldogs, his last 3 scores are tons. So those are all positive matchups in reality. And then he's got Adelaide as well. And then we look at Adelaide. They are down here. And we look at Adelaide here, and he's gone 112 and 126 against them. Does have a 2021 where he got a 68. Wonder if that was a tagged game, but I don't think Adelaide will tag. Then he's got Magpies and the Eagles. And against the Pies, he has an average of 92, and that is a 150, 64, 1. He's very volatile against the Pies. And then obviously against West Coast Eagles, averages 90 against them. And has gone tons in his last 2 games. So I don't think it's actually as bad as what this sort of statistic sort of shows. And the statistic is only -1 or so across the whole thing for Essendon. If you look here, -1.47 for the first 7 rounds. And for the first 6, it's -1.89. So I don't think it's as bad for Essendon. And he does have that favourable buy run here. If you look at basically just the round pre-buys to the round post-buys, he's got this run here where his only negative game is round 16, and that is against, if we look here quickly, round 16 is against Geelong, which we expect them to drop anyway, so that'll be a positive for him in my opinion. Petrarca, early buy, no thanks with the Clayton Oliver coming back in. Hopefully he can get that forward time to allow him to get the forward status, because we need a premium forward, like an out and out premium, because we did have the luxury of 5 last year, but I would like 1 or 2, maybe him, maybe Bont, maybe a Ruckman in general, someone like that. Just please get forward status. Rosie, Eagles first up. He looks good, no early buy, and has that round 13, which is a really positive one. Basically, I don't want to run Rosie and Butters, to be honest with you, but I could see Rosie actually jumping up. So it is a consideration if I don't want to go for the likes of a Brayshaw, because I'm more worried about him. Brayshaw and Sarong, if I can't pick it, then I may go down to a Rosie, as he could easily jump to that sort of, if we go here to Port Adelaide, I think Rosie could easily, it's up here. I think he could easily go to a 110, 111 guy, and that would be enough for a premium scorer, as he has had in the last sort of 4 seasons a jump, last 3 seasons, a jump of 13, a jump of 21, a jump of 17. Could he have a jump of 6 or 7? I think he could, to be honest with you. If we look at their CBAs, then I think you will see he's played pretty much full-time mid this whole year last year. There could have been some games where he didn't. If we look here, he basically played full-time mid except for 2, 5, and 16. If we look at 2, 5, and 16, you get 81, a 108, and a 16 was a 145. So that really shows that he can sort of score anywhere. What happens with rounds 4, 7, 8, 9? 4, 7, 8, and 9. Rounds 4, he played Sydney, probably got the hard tag. 7 played St Kilda. I think they ran a tagger with him. Round 8, Essendon probably didn't. And then round 9 against North, he probably just sat there because they couldn't be bothered to play him because it was North. And I'm pretty sure they thumped him in that game. Let's actually check that. Let's just see what happened, because if they did thump him in that game, they were probably already up. So I think he might have even sat out the last quarter. If we go to DT Talk, probably has it. Let's just see. Not that one. What was I? Let me actually search this up for you guys. DT Live it is. So that's probably going to be where we grab this from. If we go to here, and then we go to round 9, and then we go to here, and then we go to Rosie, and you can see in that second half, he did nothing because he basically sat, it looks like. And if you look at that 110, so he still played a fair chunk, but he didn't play as much as like obviously the keys and stuff like that. I'd like to just check again with his, if we just go back here, there we go. I'd like to just check what his time on ground was for what was it in the end? It's just 79. He had 85% time on ground, and his Rosie, if we look at Rosie last year, he had in total a time on ground of 84%. So he basically had his time on ground. It was against North. I think he actually sat a lot of that second half, as you saw him only put up a 27 in the second. But yeah, if you're looking at Rosie, I think he is a good option. I just think that game was an outlier. They had that game basically done at half time. If we actually look at the stats here, it was 73-28. They were up by, 45 points. That game was basically done after they blew them apart in the second quarter. 52-8 in the second. So they probably just said this game is over. There's no point even bother playing Rosie too much. Even did he sit on the end of the bench? No, he didn't. But anyway, so I think it was that he just sat on the bench a little bit and probably sat forward, to be honest with you. But anyway, moving on, Treloar, Bulldogs midfield, I think he could easily pull a hamstring, so I'm worried. You want your premiums playing 23 games, and he played 19 last year, so I'm worried about that, so I wouldn't be going there. Doherty, mid-only, don't think there's much upside with him, and he does have the early bye. Same with Dunkley, don't think there's terribly much upside, and he's got the early bye. Brad Crouch, Saints midfield, I think he is one of the ones that potentially only stays put, as I expect Steele to take it up a year, as he had a really off last year for Steele. So I think Brad Crouch doesn't actually improve too much. Libba, 103, one guy that I've looked at, but he is getting older, and I do actually think that this was sort of his peak year, to be honest with you. 21 games, so we did only sit out the 2 games. No early buy for him, so there's generally better. But 932k, I want a premium that has upside, and I don't think Libba has upside, as if we look at all of the stats basically for the Bulldogs, I think that you'll find Libba doesn't have terribly much upside, as he just went with a massive spike in CBAs. If we actually look at Libba, give me Libba's stats, you'll see time on ground was basically the same, but you can see CBAs seem to jump up quite a lot, and I don't expect him. CBAs might have been high in these couple of years in 2014 and 2016, 2013 and 14, but I don't expect him to return. Well, I don't expect him to jump up to sort of that 85 range, which is sort of needed for his for him to have any jump, to be honest with you. So I think Libba is just a miss. Cornelio, early buy, and midfield only, no thank you. Noah Anderson, midfield obviously for the Gold Coast Suns, and has that extremely early buy. I don't see there being much upside with especially Damien Hardwick there now. So I would give Noah Anderson a miss. Jack Viney, I don't know the impact of potentially Clayton Oliver coming back in. I think he will hold firm in his role, but I don't think there's much upside at the moment with him. And I think he's sort of the player that over the last couple of seasons, we've just tried to look for a run for him to have. And that's when you jump on him. But at 100 price, he could he's 29, he could jump up again if we look at Viney. But I don't expect him to do that. I expect him to stay around that 102, 103 range. If we look here, you see 2023 average of 98 in the end, just because his finals was so poor. But it was 100 in the regular season. As you see here, 96, 88, 75, 82, 91, 90, 101 back in 2016. But yeah, I just don't see it with him, to be honest with you. He'd need to get his tackles up towards that 7 to really be impactful. But I just think that he will stay around that 100 range, that 95 to 105. And I think at the 100 range, with there being Butters with about 10 points of growth, Steele with potentially anywhere from 10 to 15, LDU, if he stays fit, could go 10 to 15 better. And then also Newcomb as well I have at the moment, and some other guys, etc. They're all around there that are a lot more growth than I think Viney can do, and that's why I wouldn't be going for Viney, especially also has that early buy as well I completely forgot about, so that's a no-go for him. Zach Butters, yes. What is he currently? 23% owned. I'm surprised he's that low. He's shown he can go 10, 12, 14 points better, to be honest with you. If you look at Rosie, and then we go down to Butters, here we go, and then we go to the fantasy profile, you'll see in 2023, he went 89, 59, 60, 83 to start the year, and then they decided to just chuck him in the midfield. If we go to AFL, and then we go to CBAs again, and then we go to Port Adelaide 2023, you'll see he was basically nowhere to be seen in the midfield until round 4. And then in round 4, he also played the Swans, which is a hard enough matchup for an 83, isn't the worst. But then round 5, 110. Round 6 and round 7, 88 and 82. Round 6, he played 55%. And then round 7, he played 70. But then he started to get the bigger... not even bigger midfield time. He just started to go on a run here from round 8 to round 13, where he went... only sub 111 once in, what was that, round 11, and that was against a Richmond side. But then he basically just went on this crazy run. In rounds 18 and 19, he had 50 and 59% CBAs for and that's why he had a 68 there as well, limited CBAs. Round 20, what happened there? Just played an Adelaide side, which was probably tough. But outside of that, you see, once he started to go full-time basically into the midfield, and he got over like 60% CBAs, his couple games where he didn't have 60% CBAs were 18, 19, and 6. His 6 was an 88. His 18 was a 68. What was 20? And 20 was just a decent... So he had, I think, once he had over 60% CBAs, he dropped below like a 100, like 2 times out of 15 or something like that. So you just got to look at that and you say, there is massive upside there for him. Even if you just look at these first sort of 3-4 games and you think he's going to hit, say, 100 out of those 3 out of those 4 games, if he gets 60% CBAs, and 100 out of 3 of the first 4 games, would most likely see him gain another 80, another 90 odd points, and 90 odd points across the season is already 4 points of growth in itself. And then he's also going to have a lot more of the a lot more of these bigger games as well. So I suspect that you'll see him get towards that sort of 110 or so range, and that is what we're looking at here. Plus 10, that is right in the wheelhouse there for a premium. So that's why he is so highly owned. Tim Kelly, I just don't see it with that West Coast midfield, to be honest with you. And yes, he will be the number 1 in there, but we've seen he doesn't really have too much of a ceiling. Yes, he has a 142, but doesn't have too much of a floor. So he's a more consistent guy that you could get that will average you 100 across the season. So more likely to be just that M8 guy at the end of the year. Still massive upside, and that's why I'd go for him at 884k. I need to probably speed this up, this preview. But 884k, I really like Steele. Potential to go back to the 120, don't see that really, but I see him easily going up to that 110, 115 if he stays fit on the park and has a full preseason, which it looks like it will at the moment. Josh Kelly, early buy, no thank you. LDU, as long as he stays fit, he'll be fine and is underpriced and is at a price range where you're easily able to flip him to another premium if it all goes down. Like you could easily have LDU for the first 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then just say, yep, LDU isn't firing too much, but is firing enough or something like that to either hold him or flip him to like a Tuke Miller or something like that if you really needed to. But if he does fire, he's able to go 110, 120, I think, for the first like 7-8 weeks, which is enough to warrant that sort of selection there as well. But also I think he could be a 110 guy across the whole season if he stays fit. Neil, early buy, no thank you. Adam Shearer, early buy, no thank you. Not too much upside to cover the early buy is more so what the thinking is. Tuke Miller, extremely early buy. It is the round 3, is it? Round 3, early buy. Could consider him actually now thinking about it. But we'd have to see round 0. If he pops off in round 0, then definitely we'll consider it. Given that Gold Coast actually do, I think, have, what's their run? Here it is a minus 0.6. He does have a pretty good run in round 7. But if we look at him quickly here, you'll see Adelaide is going to be a tough game in round 1. In round 0 has Richmond. He should be able to do well there. Round 2 he has the Western Bulldogs. Then he's got Giants, Hawks, Swans, Eagles, Brisbane, North, Geelong. So that sort of 4 run here I think is a really positive one. The Eagles, Brisbane, North and Geelong. The only tough game obviously is Brisbane at the Gabba, but that is a Q clash there for them anyway. But I do think that Tuke Miller could be one that we just watch for round 0 and see where that goes. Will Day, no thank you, potentially out for a month. And that is a wait and watch to see what time he actually gets out of the moon boot that I believe he's still in. Because if he's another sort of 2-3 weeks in that moon boot, probably means he's not progressing as well from that injury. And will be in doubt for round 1. And that's when we look at the guys like a McKenzie, McDonald, Ward, anyone else that I'm missing. I don't think Warple will have much of an influence. I think I'm missing one guy there. But yeah, so you sort of look at those underpriced Hawthorn guys to see if they can get a roll for 2 or 3 weeks and just smash out the cash gen, because that's sort of what you're looking at. Josh Dacos, early buy, wing roll, no thank you. Sam Walsh is a guy that I think is well underpriced, and that's why I'm going for him. And it's a very similar thought process to that of Tuke Miller, is that even though they have the early buy, I'm going to have someone like a Jeremy Sharp hopefully covering for them, a Jeremy Sharp or a Jai Clark. So one of those two should be able to hopefully at least go 70, which will cover basically everything but about 40 points that Sam Walsh, I suspect, would score, because I have him pegged at about 110. Tuke Miller, 105, 110, so around that marker. So those two guys, I think, are massive upsides and potential top 8, sort of top 10 in their line. But they have that 1 round less that you need a Jeremy Sharp or a Clark or a Sanders McKercher or whatever you have there to cover their score. So will be interesting to see what people do. But I do think these two guys, depending on their round 0 scores, will be in people's sides. And I could potentially do Miller instead of a guy like a Newcomb or whatever that I don't have at the moment, but could float back into my side, etc. Or like a LDU or something like that if he pops off in round 0. Newcomb, a guy that I have had most of the preseason so far, but probably not in the end. Just a little bit too much risk, in my opinion, given that his ownership is only what's it at the moment, 6.5%. I think I'd go with the crowd if it was more around that 11-12, but 6.5 you can easily get a little bit burnt there, and if you get burnt, you sort of found out a little bit. And you could get burnt by 100 points across like 4 or 5 weeks quite easily there. Chad Warner, early buy, no thank you. Matt Rowell, early buy, no thank you. Will Setterfield, injury prone, no thank you. McRae is a forward, we'll get to them. Mitchell, early buy, no thank you. And Mason Woods, shown form early but fell away in the latter half of the season, is going to have that wing roll, and wings generally don't go that big unless you're an Errol Goulden who just is behind the ball and on the ball. So there's that. Luke Parker, probably when Mills get back, where depending on when he does get back, he does look like he's actually moving all right. So I suspect, if I was to put a gauge on, I would suspect Mills is probably going. I think he'll be ahead of schedule, but I don't think it's going to be like a round one. I would be shocked if it was a round one. I think it's going to be more that sort of 6 to 10 range. I don't think it will be the bye rounds that we'll see him back. I think it will be a little bit earlier, but I don't think it'll be terribly much earlier. So I'm suspecting around 6 to 10, but I'll be shocked if he comes back earlier. But obviously that'll nuke Luke Parker's a little bit worse, because you've got Rowbottom and Adams, who we suspect will be the dominant midfielders, and then you've got Chad Warner as well as Errol, as well as Parker and Mills in there as well. So you've got like 6 guys, as well as James Jordan, 7 guys already, plus Heaney, plus Papley, all in there vying for spots. And I just don't like the fragmented CBAs for Parker. Caleb Daniel is a forward. We'll talk about him. Dom Sheed, I think we've seen the best of him, to be honest with you, in that West Coast midfield. So I wouldn't be going for him. Flanders is a forward. McCluggage, early buy, no thank you. And then we start to get to just a couple more we'll do. Cripps, very underpriced, early buy. Like Walsh, could be interesting if he does go huge in round 0, but I think Walsh will be the guy that takes up a lot of the work and a lot of the fantasy scoring. Scott Pendlebury, early buy, no thank you. Never really been that sort of, in the last couple of years at least, that big outs scorer, and I think Nick Dacos has sort of taken that role from him. If we look at Scott Pendlebury, I know if it's going to light up in like 2015, 16 of him going like 100 or whatever. 2010 to 2019, 100 scorer, but you can sort of see since the pandemic, he's taken a step back in his role, and you can sort of see he's probably just going to be that 80 to 85 sort of guy again, like he has been, ever consistent, and then popping up in the key moments in the finals, basically for Collingwood. Blake Acres, early buy, no thank you, and then you get to Carl Amond. I just don't like Carl Amond because of the inflated marks that they had, and that was sort of the reason why he was a good scorer. So I don't like that reason for Carl Amond. So that's why he's not on my side, and I'd rather just go for a guy almost, because basically what I'm trying to say is that for 70k more, is Amon going to outscore in total points? Say Amon was to go 100, that would be 2,300 points. 2,300 points, divide that by 22, is only a 104. First of all, is Amon going to go that 100 that we need from him to warrant the selection over Sam Walsh? I don't know. That would be plus 13. And is Sam Walsh going to cover 105, which for him would be a plus 10? So there's only like 2.5 difference between Amon and also, it's about 4, but then you counter in the 40 or 50 or 60 that you're going to get from the guy that you sub on there, then you start getting towards that sort of, he's only going to need a 2240, say, to cover the line of Amon. 2240 divided by 22 is around that 101, 102, whereas we said Amon was a 100 and 100 on the dot, whereas Walsh to cover that only needs a 101.8. It starts to really flatten out and really realize that you'd rather just go for the proven scorer in Walsh rather than a guy in Amon that has inflated stats, because the back end, they have inflated stats in the marking when they chip it around a lot. You can see that, I think someone put a stat up with the last 4 games for the Hawks were their 4 most mark heavy games. And you see early on in the season, sort of pre-buy, that the marks sort of stay very low, or as it's a more contested game, and then it goes uncontested with the heavy marks, especially for Hawthorn, and that's why Sicily and Amon sort of dominated back there. And so that's why I think that we'll see regressions out of both of them, to be honest with you, or at least a regression from Amon going, 114? I think he could go 100 in the back row, but I don't think that's almost enough, to be honest with you, when you've got guys like Walsh, etc. He could actually pop it, that M6 role, but I don't. 100 is sort of very, very positive, I think, for him. He could easily go 90, 95, and that just isn't enough, to be honest, for Amon. But anyway, that pretty much sums up the video for the premiums for the midfielders. A very long video, 44 minutes is a long time to talk to you guys about them. I probably double checked myself ominously with a couple of these guys. It's in particular Parrish, Sarong, Laird, and Brayshaw are sort of those M1, M2 sort of debates for me, and going through and thinking, are they really going to be useful? And then you've got guys like Butters, Steele, Xavier Junior sort of filling out that, and then also Newcomb, Walsh, sort of filling out that M3 to M6 sort of range. And then you have guys like, do you take a punt on an Amon? Do you take a punt, an early punt on a Paddy Cripps to get back to his best? And guys like that. But anyway, that pretty much, or even Nick Martin, which we'll get to in the sort of mid prices, as he sort of has a similar thing to Amon, but is 2 points cheaper. So there's that as well. But anyway, that is pretty much the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.